So page 159, Chief Executive's report. Robert.
Thank you, Your Worship. So take that report as read. There's some fairly detailed explanations on some key sort of important projects. You'll notice that generally speaking we're in a reasonably comfortable position, let's say, from where we were expecting to be. There's one issue that came up over the weekend. Apparently we were reported in the Waikato Times about a $7 million underpayment on our rates, which is actually, whilst it was factual in the annual report, it's no longer factual because that only occurred because we, through COVID, delayed the payment penalty time. So all of those rates have now been sort of paid, and we're up to date in terms of where we would normally be. But that will be reported as normal through the Audit and Risk Committee. So nothing to see here is actually the general response to that media report.
Just a comment there, that's still playing on the radio this morning, it's going to be on the Coast Road as well. So
how we going to correct that information in that paper?
Lorna's onto it.
Because misinformation, there's a lot of it around, and it's one one.
Again, just to re-emphasise, in terms of the annual report, it was a factual statement, but it's no longer true. It was just a timing issue in relation to us delaying the date for penalties. So we did the right thing in relation to COVID, but actually it created that timing issue that focused the annual report. But no big issue.
And people don't understand the process as a council.
But it's also, I want to say to the chair, it's also a perspective issue which they didn't report in there, and that is that it's also dependent on the amount of instalments, rates instalments each council has during the year, and also the timing of that last instalment. So, like the Hamilton City Council, for example, they only have 4 rates instalments, so therefore you would expect their debtors at year end to be a lot less because when you spread that over the year, and the paper didn't have any of that perspective.
Continued lack of understanding.
Through the chair, can I ask a question?
Yes, certainly.
I don't helpfully provide some information, but I contacted her because she was the acting CDO, otherwise I would have contacted you. But the reality is that initially when I made the request beginning of last year, and I got the information as to staff numbers, they came back with part-time and others of 263 and consultants. And I think that was higher than was expected by the council because I've been told we think we have about 160 something, and with the extra 100 higher, but so be it. I note in your report on page, I think it's 166, you've got a comment at the back, because the last figures that Don sent through indicated we now have 199 staff, 12 of those are permanent, and the others are part-time. You say here at number 4, under the budget due to 16 vacancies in December, of which 3 were filled during January and 10 still being advertised. How does that tie in with the extra 19 that Donna has? Is that on top of that again?
Yeah. So look, staff numbers is always going to be a snapshot in time. So when I first arrived here, I think there were about 245 FTEs. But generally speaking, we've operated at around 205 to 210 FTEs. That's basically a calculation of part-timers, full-timers, and anyone else that's doing any hours for us. Well, actually, I think casuals are probably excluded because they don't do enough hours to fall into that calculation. But as we move into summer, FTE numbers would be far larger than as we were working through winter, because we take on far more people during the summer peak period because we need to. So community ambassadors and those sorts of people are extra people that we would bring on staff. So in terms of the FTE number that is about right for this organisation, I believe it's sort of the 215 to 230 mark if we were to average it out over a year, but obviously it varies because of peaks and troughs in the work activity. So that is what I'm looking at in terms of an FTE number that we aim for. At the moment, we've struggled to employ staff, which is why those vacancies exist, although at the moment we're going through a good phase of being able to get a lot of applications and make some really good hires. So the signs are very encouraging post-COVID.
Is there any way that staff who are employed, part of they become staff, they will work through the peak periods? It just seems to me that seems to be a real problem period.
No, I mean, staff, generally speaking, are very good about resourcing peak periods. And you'll know from Whangamata locally that we've got key staff always on board during those peak periods, even though it's sort of 1st of January or whatever, you know, they will.
They wouldn't be permanent, so would they?
They are generally the permanent staff that we rely on a lot. Yeah, so.
Around the wharf and things like that.
Well, again, those would be more part-timers or one-off appointments during the summer period, but we do have really good staff that know this is a visitor industry. We know that it's a very peak period of time, so they do plan to be around at those key times.
I'm along here with Gary, that, you know, there's not a lot of visibility around staff meetings, and maybe if we can have a bit more clarity around those, when you do your report or on a monthly basis, it really help understand, you know, where the gaps are, because the story is out there is a lot of good people around at the moment, come back from overseas, and opportunities are pretty good. So it's interesting to see we've still got 10 still to be advertised. So.
Being advertised, I believe, but again, I'm not sure what HR manager's not in the room, but happy to.
It's nice to understand that better.
Yeah, that's okay. So look, I think that's an audit risk type of issue, and I might see if we can feed into the audit risk committee.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Any other questions of Rob?
One thing I would say on that staff numbers, I mean, even though staff numbers is an important issue to look at, I think the actual important issue to look at is personnel costs. So the personnel costs in this report, as of December, you'll note that we're $400,000 down, driven primarily by a lot of those vacancies. But what we've also got to realise is that staff this year took a pay freeze for a whole 12 months. That got removed from the budget. So even though we reduced the budget to take out any pay increases for staff, we're still 400,000 below. So the main importance of that is that staff personnel costs have not increased. We've held the line. We've managed to get most of the work done. You know, we've not had delays on many projects, and we're still $400,000 under because of those vacancies.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's really good. But we need to understand too, where's the consultancy side coming from? If we're short this side, we're spending money that side?
Well, again, we're still within budget. So again, if you look at the other aspects of what we're delivering, there's no projections of any budget exposure or increases in relation to those sorts of costs.
Right. Yeah. And we understand that.
Right, any other questions of Rob? Murray, did you have a question?
No.
Okay, cool. Right, moving right along here, if that's the case. Dan, I have a mover.
I'll move.
Tony, second Murray, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. So now we have the members' report. Murray. Tony.
Well, that was not very good. It wasn't a normal regular meeting.
Tony.
Well, I've also been to a few, the full-on management meetings like Thames, Paranui, Tauru and Whangamata. I found those pretty interesting. Paranui was what was interesting to me, and that was very, very different to the others and the feedback I had from the staff that have been running it. And I think the process has been pretty good, and a lot of people in the conversation, people engaging in it to understand what we're doing has been very good. Paranui attempted, they all wanted to, well, you couldn't get into the place, they're outside, that's how they turned up there. They actually wanted solutions on that day.
Yeah.
Because that is what this was about just yet. And with the rate pay meetings, down in 4 we're probably Beach, Forest Cove, Power and Marine. And I would say they're all, to me, very positive meetings and supportive of pretty much what we're doing. In fact,
Very quiet.
there were none that I would have any controversial issues, and there was no one raised any questions of any elected people there, so I didn't get to Otago on Sunday, so I don't know what they want to put me out. And the only other comment I had was from the presentation today, so the Pebby Bridge, That is correct, it is on the radar to be replaced because of the structural issues. There's no guarantee it's going to be 2 lanes. When you hear that stuff, that'll be on, it's in ZTA. So yes, it'd be done to build it and not have a 2 lane, but it'd also be done to do that and not do the Graham's and the,
Graham's Creek and the Bailey Bridge.
Yeah.
so, and yeah, then you might argue it'd be done not to actually do Coromandel as well, because it's another major choke point, and it's worse from a safety point of view for vision. Didn't want it off it, but anyhow. So if anyone's thinking they're going to have a 2-lane bridge, of course we'll represent that as hard as we can at the Regional Transport Committee, but there'll be a lot of work to be done before it actually becomes 2 lanes with walkways and cycleways on it.
However, I think, personally, I think they'll be pushing it to do a 1-lane bridge, given that the Prime Minister actually observed that 1 lane at Kepi in operation, and I think she was rather gobsmacked by the constant backlog of traffic.
So I just wanted to ask a follow-up. In that presentation around the Kepi Reserve, there was a shaded bit on each side, on the other side, talking about if a 2-lane bridge goes there, they'd have to put, what's it called, reclamation, all that kind of stuff. So is that correct?
I don't know, but
Sorry, I mean,
that certainly hasn't happened at any meeting I've gone to. That is an individual who's come up with his solution, which would include a reclamation. But we all know reclamations are not a very easy thing to get across the line in any shape or form. And particularly if they're going to be used for parking and everything else. So, and my only other thing was with fire. So the people here, we used to have bylaws about us for fireworks and fires. With Thames now do it, we have no say. So I got a phone call on Sunday night with some lunatic a bit of fire, not far from Murray was actually, and where I live. And they didn't know who to ring. So we couldn't get the TCDC after hours person. They couldn't get the Thames after hours person because there was no 800 number leave a message. And my advice was to ring the fire brigade and police and just get them onto it. But yeah, I just mentioned for anyone here, fires have got nothing to do with TCDC and neither are fireworks. So any policies that we have lying around, we should start to tear those ones up. And we need to put the emphasis and the media to people. If you want to report a fire, this is where you go. Because that night I couldn't find the person in TCDC, and I couldn't find the person in Thames. So I rang Brian and woke him up.
It was only up last day.
He was getting ready for a busy day, wasn't he? So yeah, what that's worth. If you're going to ring up about that, tell me to go to the police and the fire brigade. That's it for me.
Thank you, Sally.
That's what I was just going to talk about in terms of emergency management. So far, fingers and toes crossed, we haven't had a major fire here. However, the risk continues, and February, March can be even more tragic. So any messaging, and take your point. And good summer in Jeans. But a lot of people still shut their shops and go on holiday.
Thank you, Sally. Gary.
Oh, sorry, I thought Sandra developed the voice. Yes, I'll mention about Williamson Park and the media we got. As you may know, I have a grandstand view. We're right on the park. And I was somewhat upset because we got fired up by a Herald reporter that's down there and thought it would be a damn good idea to write a story. I, pretty soon after that, sent an email to the community board and Terry and Eileen and Donna and others about that, because it really, we've had at the Kings here, we had at our meeting, we discussed that at the last meeting. It was a workshop, everyone was still hot. The locals were furious at the publicity. I took some photographs to show the lack of damage. And it was really a total beat up. We worked out what the problem was. First was the police. The previous district police commander, very nice guy, used to come and see me, have a glass of wine, but he believed that police really shouldn't be policing in sort of areas like that. And he cut right back on it. They used to watch with horror young people turning up with their cars, and 30 police would be around, they'd clear their cars out, put all their birds out, and no one would have birds. No policing of birds in the park, none of that happening. And there were only 2 police officers, and it was all too scary for them, and they went down the beach and gave a couple of tickets out for something. And when it all started to happen, there were no police at all at Joe's Farm, and then they called them the riot squad. And it was really quite sad because a police officer who lived down the line, I won't say too much, you might work out who it is, he was ashamed of what was happening to the riot squad, chasing 14-year-olds who hadn't been drinking, throwing their weapons around. So it wasn't good. And he didn't want to overreact and da. But the other point which I did raise was the problem that we've got to plan the entertainment. And everyone was getting hold of me. I couldn't go anywhere without people grabbing me and saying, what's happened to the summer festival, da. Now, as you might remember me raising early last year about getting off the bylaw of the ticketing fence to over 500. That has to happen before we can get back to the free function type of thing, which everyone wants. And when do you think that will happen? The fence and ticketed on the
We'll talk about that later. I think, yeah, I mean,
because that's making people very angry because they can't. People wanted to have. I was prepared to fund myself and pay for a cover band just to have something on. Can't do it. So the short answer is we need to get that done. So
well, I think if you bring that up through community board, get community board to put something into.
Well, we've already discussed it and that will happen. But I brought it up in the council. And it was going to happen. You said to me, yes, we'll attend to that.
Through the chat, we'll create a time for us to talk at the end of this meeting about that specific issue.
Well, that really seems to be something that's a real problem because Joe's Farm's great for over 18-year-olds and over, and we were just watching it build up over the nights before testosterone was running high, and in the end there was only a few that were really drinking, and then they just went a bit stupid, not that angry. And unfortunately, that's what happened. So we need
Bring
to.
your pets in. Sorry, and Martin's just chasing a lizard on the floor.
Oh, right. So anyhow, it would be good if we can get that done. We've got the public want to answer some comments on there. Stop this happening again. Okay.
Anything else? No, Martin?
No, yeah,
Nothing. I'm sure you've been a busy man. Yes, Robin?
No, it feels, when we talked last year about things really happening in terms of it feeling like there was a buzz here, and I really felt like that over the summertime. There was quite a lot going on. And it felt busy everywhere, but nice everywhere, and it was good to feel that. So that's all.
Thank you. Robin, John?
Just a couple of things. Just commenting on Gary's report there and whatever from the car and his view of the police response and involvement and readiness for that thing. We just got Gary's version of it. I'm just wondering if something like that happens in the district, whether it is of concern to us, whether we shouldn't have.
Yeah, will be,
Police come and call to us, because I'm sure there is another side of the story.
Well, I know they are coming
from
we're meeting with the district commander.
From a policing point of view, because, so it might just interest to hear what they say.
Thanks, sir.
And, the other thing is, Tahi Sugar, that's quite a biggie actually, and that's progressed quite well standard on our King meetings. We're so far over on budget, not a little bit under on most things. We're still looking at what process to go through, be it fast track or normal process. I can tell you now, the project is breathing enthusiasm up to Coromandel. It's seen a very good thing for the town and for the district as a whole. And when you get a presentation such as we did this morning, it doesn't necessarily paint the correct picture, is all I'll say. And while it would have been easy to engage in that forum this morning, I don't think it would have proved worthwhile because, but I'll just reassure you, Rikitahi is looking good, with confidence on the right track, And, yeah, it's almost not good.
Just on that, council were totally supportive of the Gateway project, thought it was a great initiative. But we were not party to that project directly, financially, only financially. Did anybody else have any questions for John? No? Terry?
Yeah, just a quick one. The southeast ward's pumping at the moment. Thames-Coromandel are really, really busy and still cranking, so they've had a great summer. Just on a bit of governance thing, I think, I still struggle with getting transparency and everything. I still read those 700-page agendas, but come here and get surprises. So I'm asking the question again, to make sure that all the information that you've got, at least give it to us. If we read it, it's up to us, but at least we can have it. And again, it's all about communication through emails. Some of the emails I've seen are very, very demeaning. Maybe we need to get our act together around those. I want to say a quick thanks to the Tairua Paranui Ratepayers Association and the working group that's working on the bridges. There's been a working group there and they've been contacting the government, and I think they're making some traction, and thanks for what you're doing, Tony, your end. It'd be great to see what happens, and like I say, you say we don't know what we're going to get, but getting something is really important. And the last one was about the parking issue, and I read this over from Kay Baker. I had nothing to do with Kay Baker putting this together, but this is her walk around the town with 1,500 petitions, and I'll just drop it on the table. I'm not sure it's today, and that was from her, not from me. Thank you.
Okay, did Warwick or Ken, did you want to have any contribution? I'm just being a bit random here. And can I just say, Warwick Brooks is not the Brooks that was supposedly have made comments around not supporting Corey Clark. So just wanted to clarify that. The key thing here is a lot of assumptions. People shoot their mouths off when they have no idea what they're talking about, and so that happens too often. And so I just rang Warwick directly, and he's smarter than that. He said he's been around the traps, he knows how things work, and he knows what he's allowed to do and what he's not allowed to do. So good on you, Warwick, appreciate that.
It's been a miserable Christmas, but
Come to our place.
gun laws, we got it in place, pretty good to me. It was a Warwick Brook. Warwick and Philma Brook. I'm Tyra Terrace, quite away from where I live. However, social media being what it is, has to kick that, doesn't it? Anyway.
So it's important to just establish the facts before you start to say anything, isn't it? So Ken, did you want to say anything?
Not, Your Worship, I'd like to say something later on in the meeting.
All right, and so being last, can I just say, yes, we've been completely action-packed this summer peak period. Tons of people, I mean, the roads were just bumper to bumper on Friday night and bumper to bumper going back yesterday. It was just, there's no way you could get out our driveway onto that main road, and mind you, we were trying to. But apart from that blip at Whangamata, everywhere else went off fantastically. So I just think it's a big pat in the back for all of those people that were out and about, milling around over the holiday period, and on the whole having a good time. And as I said to Lorna, and I said you can quote me on this, they come under that Kobe Bridge, get a whiff of the Coromandel, and then they're happy. So yeah, so I'm really thrilled. Water conservation is still an important aspect of what's happening here, and unfortunately we've got a complete water ban in Coromandel right now, and but that's just the way it goes at times. Still lots of people around, and just thank everybody for, Murray?
Can I just make a little comment, please?
Yeah.
I just want to pass a vote of thanks because I was in Coromandel when all that Whangamata stuff went. Having sat on the DLC for Joe's farm, and I saw all that, I was having kittens sitting down in Coromandel, down in Christchurch. Let me say at that time, I sent a text to Brian, came back, answered promptly, nothing to worry about, Joe's farm went all good, and I appreciate that, Brian.
And I can say that Wilson Park was a bit of an overkill. Kids jumped up and down on the roof. They were open the next day for operation. They had a full bumper crowd all day. There was one chair broken, and the kids who got the ice cream were caught because they had it in their mouth. So, just kids doing kids stuff.
protect on TV.
Yeah, they always do, build it up. The cops were standing back and they decided to go in and sort it out.
Obviously produced this.
There was I think a very, a reporter from some paper who made some good mileage out of it.
Okay, yeah.
All the papers did, and they just like those controversial statements.
I love it.
Dalton, Brett, or whatever, but, can I just say, Murray, this wasn't just Brian, just all the staff, I just like, thank you all very much. I mean, you go the extra mile and do a brilliant job. Brian in particular, you and your team, you know, and Donna kept holding the fort while Rob was away. It can get very stressful at times. I'd just like to thank staff very, very much for all your hard work. Because nothing happens here without you guys. We only bitch and moan and make the decisions. You guys do all the hard graft, so thank you.
We come and go, you stay.
Hey?
We come and go, but they stay.
That's right. You know, and then they have to put up with our shit.
Yeah, I
So
Thanks,
mine,
guys.
So right now that, can I remove and the seconder for the reports?
Yes.
Move Robin, seconder,
Yeah.
Terry, all those in favour, please say aye.
Bye.
Yes, Terry, well done. Okay, we're going into public excluded, do I have a mover?
So
Well, just before we do,
Mover John, seconded Murray, open for discussion, yes, Gary?
just before we do, well, I have a concern, and I sent off to Rob some of my concerns about how this policy is adopted. I've had some discussions with some pretty senior legal people, and I think we're going to have to get an independent legal opinion on this, because
So there is a report, as we were told at the beginning of the meeting, that was taken to audit and risk by Alison Hunt.
well, but it's going to,
So if you think there's a risk there, that you can bring it up at audit and risk?
well, no, you're missing my point. We wanted to go on now in regard to these ones. Well, I thought, for example, I've already mentioned 101 Lindsay Road, Whangataa, does not fall within the criteria. And I would be opposing that. It's been in the public arena for 4 years, and how that could go in, for some reason, to say, and rely on the Official Information Act, which actually, if you read that, doesn't really cover local government at all, as a reason to do it. It's really quite unacceptable.
So can I just pass it?
what do you want to,
So, yes, Murray? Sorry.
We're not here, but I value Gary's input in that regard. And I had a conversation with Sandra first thing this morning. Sadly, we haven't had that much time to talk since I came back and Sandra. So, but basically, Lindsay Road, I'm more than happy to throw that to the room to decide whether you want to discuss it in public excluded or not. Staff, in my absence, took a conservative approach to that particular report because there are other reports that are third-party reports and contain information about third parties, private calculations and operational budgets and that sort of thing. And there's also some commercially sensitive information that we may discuss if we get into valuations or what do we want type of.
That actually in public, all that stuff, that reports.
But again, this is the staff advice, is that there is certain information that is actually considered to be either private or commercially sensitive.
Yeah.
So again, I and staff really have to provide, we're required to provide you with the advice that those things exist, which is why we took the ultra-conservative approach of having that in public excluded. However, if as a council you wish to have those discussions in public, that's fine. We don't mind. It does introduce some low-level risk from my perspective in terms of your commercial position and also the threats that may have on some external third parties that didn't wish information to be disclosed, although Terry, you just told me it's already in the public domain. So that's fine. If you're happy to talk about that and have this report talked about in public, then my advice to you would be, you're the council, you can decide what you want to do, but it has to be a majority decision of council to get to that point. So I'm hearing you, but again, we have to be clear that there are low-level risks, there are real reasons why staff made that conservative decision. But again, it's your choice because you are the council.
The whole report was put out.
Excuse me, Terry,
Well,
I was going to speak, I had my hand up. Yeah, I did, I had my hand up towards the end, so I'm speaking. So I'm going to speak, and in conjunction with what Rob is saying, I would support public excluded on the premise that while there's a low level risk, the Privacy Commissioner is taking a much more conservative view of privacy issues and would probably err on the side of caution rather than putting it right out there. And so I would be concerned if we ignored a low level risk.
Talk to the Privacy Commission. What nonsense.
Everything has been open to the public. The report was put by council to go to the local Stewart guy to do the report on the valuation of the property, what it could be used for, everything. The Marai report's put out, the latest report that you guys put out to the public. There's nothing in the private arena or excluded arena to discuss. This is open to the public. And it's been there for 4 years and everybody understands it. So why it's been hidden is a bit of a concern. Everybody goes, oh, what's going on? It's been hidden, what's going on? So it automatically puts some doubt in people's minds.
Again, just to clarify, it's not been hidden.
I know,
It's
I agree
actually
that.
just, council staff are just following the process, but again, I would now to the table to decide how you want to deal with that, and that's fine. I'm relaxed over that.
The bit, can I talk?
You go.
The bit for me that is commercially sensitive is our advice or feedback to the CEO. If it was decided to sell the land, what parameters, what price, etc. So those parameters of that sale, to me, is commercially sensitive, because if that's public, well, who's going to offer us more than that? Nobody. So to me, I hear what you're saying about the decision to sell has high community input, but how we sell it, if that decision is made, to me, is commercially sensitive.
Right.
So we put the whole thing in, or else we talk about whether we're going to sell it. And then if we decide that, well, then we go into committee to discuss the whys and wherefores and the hows of that.
Yeah, if it gets to that stage, go to the committee, but until then.
So from my perspective, the advice I could give to you in relation to that particular issue is that we discuss the issue in confidence. However, we release the minutes and the resolutions with redacted, i.e. still in confidence any of those commercial issues. So that would be the most sensible solution in that regard, if that's the concern around the table.
So that's my concern. I don't know.
Just tell you what Rob said, we have done in the past, come out, passed another resolution in open meeting, and put the attachments on there, haven't we? And then it's open, recorded notice. So there's two parts.
So the rule was based on it, yeah.
And I think that's the best way to go.
Yeah, the reaction of the people is, why are you hiding it when this is a public event, public thing that's going on?
Well, it goes on the public minutes if we do it the other way.
Yeah, so having some public disclosure that we're looking at this in the right way.
I thought we did public disclosure on any decision we made public excluded.
You can make a
The
decision.
decision.
We can release those resolutions.
Okay, so, any further discussion or questions to Rob? There being none, then it's been moved and seconded that we go into public excluded. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Oh, 2 against?